It's finally time, guys. We are live, week 9 of the Pokemon World Domination Draft League. If we win, we have a shot at the playoffs. If we lose, well, if we lose, we go to 4-5 and the season's done. But I did notice, too, how inconsistent this team was. A ton of setup all season, so it didn't exactly go as planned, but we can still get above 500 if we win. We are facing Shiny Shuriken. Check out his channel, link is in the description. He's the one that invited me to do this league. I have had a blast, but the time for talk is over. Can we get to 5 and 4, or are we going to fall below 500? Let's see how this battle goes. Now at first, I'm thinking, okay, how do I want to start this battle off? Seeing what they brought. There were a couple Pokemon that I didn't have much for, so I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what they're going to lead, but I know we're going to lead Azumarill. Now, they started off with Cryogonal, and I'm like, okay, well, this thing is definitely going to have Freeze Dry, but its defenses aren't that good. I don't know how much Freeze Dry is going to do to me, and I'm like, okay, well, let's see if we can get some damage on this thing. Aqua Jet's definitely going to do at least half, should definitely be a clear 2-hit KO, so we're going to go for Aqua Jet. Now, this is a Muscle Band set, so I'm not locked into moves. I've ran it Choice Band previously, but so we're not going to be locked into moves, so I can go for Aqua Jet, and then if they switch or anything, we can actually go for a different move if they decide to stay in or not. So we're going to be going for the Aqua Jet. Now, I thought about Knockoff, I thought about Playoff, because Playoff would definitely take it out, but I know Freeze Dry is going to be coming my way, and I don't know how much damage that's going to do, and what if they freeze me? You know, what if they get some crazy hacks? So we're going to go for Aqua Jet. It's a clear 2-hit KO. We do definitely over half, and Freeze Dry does a lot of damage. We just live on about 15 health. And I'm thinking, okay, are they going to stay in? Well, we're just going to go for Aqua Jet again because I don't know if they're going to stay in or not. Cryogonal is a big counter for the team, but I just went for Aqua Jet, hoping they'd stay in. Unfortunately, they do swap, and Thwacky's going to come in. Now, Thwacky is going to be setting up the Grassy Terrain with the Grassy Surge ability. Now, I'm assuming this thing is Eviolited because it's a pre-evolved form. You don't take Thwacky and outrun Eviolite. So we're going to be hitting it with Aqua Jet. That's going to do basically nothing. Like, it pretty much didn't even feel that at all. But we're both going to be getting some terrain recovery. And I'm like, okay, well, I have to switch out Azumarill. I cannot afford to keep it in, especially if they go for Grassy Glide, unless they're expecting Sap Sipper, which they go for U-Turn, probably expecting possible Sap Sipper. But they also probably just thought I would switch anyway. So we're going to switch to Rotom. It lives the U-turn easily, doesn't do that much damage. And Cryogonal is going to come back in. I'm thinking, okay, maybe I can paralyze this Cryogonal. And we're going to get some leftovers recovery. I'm thinking we can Thunder Wave it, slow it down, and Cryogonal is going to be going for an Ice Beam. And this does some massive, massive damage. Nearly taking me out, just surviving on 2 health. Now I'm thinking, how did that do so much damage? I don't know, is that Specs or is that Expert Belt? What does this thing have? But either way, we just survive. We're going to get some recovery from the leftovers. I'm like, hold on. We outspeed. Why not try to get some scummy air slash flinches, see if we can actually take it out with the Rotom. So I get 1 flinch. I'm like, okay, we just need either another flinch or we can get a good damage roll. Judging by the damage, I'm like, Air Slash should be able to take it out. So we're going to go for Air Slash. Hopefully it doesn't miss, and it doesn't. But Cryogonal is going to live on just 2 health, like 1 or 2 health, and it's going to finish me off with an Ice Beam. So unfortunately, my fan is not going to be a fan of going down, but he's going to go down. I'm like, okay, well, Cryogonal has basically no health left. I can just send in like anything and take this thing out. So we're going to go into Noivern. Now I almost went into Rillaboom because we could have just Grassy Terrain to take it out. But I decided to go into Noivern, and we're just going to go for the Flamethrower. Now I did think about switching But I'm like, no, because if I switch, something's going to take an Ice Beam. So we're just going to be going for the Flamethrower. Now, I was looking at what he had, and I eventually realized, yeah, this wasn't the best switch-in, but there's nothing I can do now. Seeing that he still had Blastoise, it's definitely going to have an Ice move. So I decided to go for Flamethrower. That is definitely going to take out Cryogonal. I had Boom Burst for Throat Spray, but I couldn't go for that with Blastoise still around, and it hasn't even taken any damage yet either. So Cryogonal is going to go down, and no surprise, Blastoise is going to be swapping in. Now, I cannot leave Noivern in against this thing, and Ice Beam is definitely going to be coming my way. However, if they have Shell Smash and go for it, that's definitely a problem. Thankfully, though, they don't. They just go for the Ice Beam. And Toxtricity is going to be losing its Air Balloon. However, it's going to be living the Ice Beam pretty easily, which is a surprise considering Toxtricity doesn't have that good of defensive stats. So I'm thinking, okay, now I could go, do I go for a Volt Switch? Do I go for Overdrive? I have to at least do some damage to this thing. Now, surprisingly, Blastoise is actually going to be going for the Dynamax here. And I'm like, this is a surprise. What if this is weakness policy Blastoise or something wild? So I'm like, well, we're just going to go for Overdrive because I could Volt Switch, but seeing the Dynamax, I was glad that I didn't Volt Switch because something was going to be taking possibly a Max Geyser, possibly Max Quake or Max Steel Spike if they have Flash Cannon, something like that. And especially if it's Noivern, it'd definitely not be living an attack. So we're just going to go for the Overdrive. It actually does some big damage to Blastoise. It's definitely a speedier set. And Max Quake is definitely going to be taking out the Toxtricity. So that is going to be my Toxtricity down, and Blastoise is going to get a +1 in Special Defense, which isn't going to make a huge difference, depending on what I send in. Now, I'm going to send in Rillaboom. I can't imagine Blastoise is going to stay in, but it is in Dynamax, so maybe there's a chance it lives if it has some defensive investments. So we're going to be going for possibly a Grassy Glide. Now, I thought about High Horsepower, but I didn't know what they were going to swap in. So Blastoise is going to be switching out, foregoing its Dynamax, and now Thwackey is going to swap in. And I'm like, okay, it's definitely a good thing I did not go for the High Horsepower. That would have done absolutely nothing because it would have been resisted. So Thwackey's going to take, like, no damage from the Grassy Glide. And now I'm like, okay, well, now, wait, we can go for knockoff. We can get rid of that Eviolite. So we're going to be knocking off the Eviolite there on the Thwackey. Doesn't do that much damage, but that's based off the Eviolite, and it's going to go for a U-turn. Like, okay, if it's going for U-turn, I'm pretty sure, like 99% sure, that Cinderace is coming in. I mean, there's no reason Cinderace isn't going to be coming in. And sure enough, Cinderace does come in. I mean, of course it does. I mean, what else would they send it on a Rillaboom? So I'm like, okay, well, Pyro Ball definitely is going to be coming my way. I can't go for Grassy Glide because there's no way I'm going to survive a Pyro Ball. So I'm like, okay, well, we'll send in Stunfisk. See how much damage this is going to do. Now, the Stunfisk I've been running is just full in both defenses. It's basically made to sponge most attacks. So Pyro Ball does just over half. I'm like, okay, well, if I can possibly survive one more Pyro Ball, we can get off a Pain Split and get some damage in on a Cinderace. Now, Cinderace wasn't Life Orb. I thought there was a chance that it might be, but Pyro Ball is going to land. Unfortunately, though, Stunfisk is not going to be able to survive, and Stunfisk is going to go down to the Pyro Ball. Like, this Cinderace was just destroying my team. Now, I didn't know if it had Sucker Punch, so I'm like, okay, well, let's send in a Azumarill. I mean, I'm pretty sure it has Sucker Punch, but keeping Azumarill around isn't going to make a big difference. And of course, it's going to have Sucker Punch, and because of the stab and my low health, Azumarill's going to go down. Now, it Sucker Punched me with its foot, which, I don't know, it's almost like a sucker kick at that point. So, Azumarill is going to go down, and now we're going to send in Noivern. I'm like, okay, now, Cinderace definitely isn't going to survive if I Dynamax. So let's Dynamax go for a Max Wormwood, and if Cinderace possibly Dynamaxes, we can at least get an attack drop on the Cinderace. Well, wait, it can't Dynamax! Never mind, forgot Blastoise Dynamaxed. So Cinderace is going to be swapping out, and I'm like, oh, well, that kind of sucks. I wanted to get an attack drop on it. But Thwacky's going to come in, so we're going to be Dynamaxing. We're going to be going for the Max Wormwood. Now, Thwacky does not have the Eviolite anymore, so this should take it out, judging by the power that Max Wormwood's going to have, and Thwacky's not going to have the best defenses in the world because it's only second stage, and the Eviolite's gone. So we're going to be Dynamaxing, going for the Max Wormwood. Now, I almost went for a Max Flare, expecting a swap, but I didn't know what they'd be swapping to. But they couldn't swap to Blastoise, and initially I saw Blastoise, but they couldn't swap on it on only half health. It definitely wouldn't have lived. So Max Wormwood is going to be taking out the Thwacky, and they also had Grimmsnarl, and if they would have swapped in Grimmsnarl, that would have definitely been very bad. Which, speaking of Grimmsnarl, it's going to be what's coming in next. I'm thinking, okay, well, Grimmsnarl definitely has Thunder Wave. I mean, there is no way this thing's not going to have Thunder Wave, especially with the Prankster ability. It's automatically going to go first. And I would love for it to miss, but unfortunately Thunder Wave is going to land, and now we're paralyzed. The good news is we're going to be going for a Max Airstream, so we're still going to be outspeeding the Grimmsnarl no matter what it goes for. Because it can't do any other status moves to me. It can't, like, Toxic me or Taunt me, anything like that. Which it can't get Toxic anyway. So it's going to have the Leftovers recovery, and it's also going to be getting the Terrain recovery as well. So one Max Airstream will definitely finish off the Grimmsnarl, judging by the damage from the first Max Airstream. So we're just going to be using the Max Airstream and finishing it off. Now, I almost thought about a Max Flare, but I wanted to take this thing out. And I also didn't know what else Grimmsnarl had. Like, is it running like a Draining Kiss set? Is it, I mean, what's it running? I don't know. And Grimmsnarl is going to be going down. Now, unfortunately, my Dynamax chances are going to end because I've used the end of my third turn. And Rabambi's going to come in. And I'm like, oh no. This thing definitely has Moonblast. Definitely has Moonblast. The good news is we're still going to outspeed the Rabambi, even though we're paralyzed because we're +2 in speed. But unfortunately, I'm going to get paralyzed. So we're going to be unable to move, and Rabambi's going to go for Psychic. I'm like, okay, maybe it doesn't have Moonblast. Now that Psychic, because I was paralyzed, is actually going to make a slight difference in this battle. So we're just going to be going for a Air Slash, hoping we can get a flinch on the Rabambi. Unfortunately, we don't get flinch, but Rabambi's going to live. Now, this was, I'm assuming, a max HP set, because it definitely would have taken it down to its Focus Sash anyway, if it had a Sash. Now, the person I was battling, they actually told me it had the Heavy Duty Boots. So, just in case there were any rocks sent in, which I unfortunately wasn't able to set. So, we're going to be finishing off the Rabambi with the Boom Burst. We are going to get that Throat Spray activation, which I did want. Now, the initial goal was Air Slash turn 1, assuming it was sashed, and then hit the Boom Burst to get the Throat Spray activation. Now, unfortunately, because of where my health is at, because I was paralyzed that first attempt going for the Air Slash, Cinderace is actually going to be able to take me out with a Sucker Punch. Had I not been hit with 2 Psychics, it actually would have lived, which would have been crazy, because we would have had a chance to actually win this battle without having to rely on a little bit of luck. So anyway, Noivern is going to go down to the Pyro Ball, and the only thing I'm going to have left is Rillaboom. Now, the only thing I can do at this point is hope for a Pyro Ball miss, and just go for the high horsepower, and just cross my fingers and pray that it misses. So we're going to be setting the terrain on the field. So if Pyro Ball does miss and high horsepower lands, Blastoise is no doubt going to go down to the Grassy Glide. So we're going to go for the high horsepower, but unfortunately, Pyro Ball is going to land, taking out the Rillaboom, and that is going to be the battle. A nice battle there, great win by our opponent. That Cinderace was definitely an issue all match. GG's, Mac. Unfortunately, we're going to fall to 4-5. We're going to miss the playoffs, but considering the draft we had, I'm not upset with the season. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed keeping up with the league. Finally, a not awful loss for me to feel absolutely bad about. I'm not upset about the loss, I'm just upset at some of the minor mistakes that I did make, but my opponent also made some slight misplays as well, and we actually had a voice call going. But thanks for keeping up with the season, everybody. We will be back next year. Have a great night.